Mr. Speaker, I stand to move the following motion standing in my name. Whereas it is necessary to provide for the state of Grenada for the year 2019 by means of an appropriation act, be it resolved that the estimates of expenditure for the year 2019 be approved.
Honorable members, the question proposed is that the estimate of the revenue and expenditure for the fiscal year 1st January to December 31st, 2019 be approved. Minister for Finance.
Mr. Speaker, as this is a money motion, I wish to signal to this Honorable House that I have the consent of the Governor General to proceed. Mr. Speaker, in compliance with the Fiscal Responsibility Act and the Regulations for Public Finance Management Act and Public Debt Management Act, I wish to advise that the following 5 reports are being submitted to this Honorable House. The Medium-Term Fiscal Framework Document 2019 to 2021, in accordance with Section 92A of the Regulations of the Public Finance Management Act number 17 of 2015. 2, the progress report on the compliance with the fiscal rules and targets in accordance with Section 12(1)(c) of the Fiscal Responsibility Act number 29 of 2015 as amended. 3, the budget framework paper 2019 in accordance with Section 13 of the Regulations for Public Finance Management Act number 17 of 2015. And 4th, the Medium-Term Debt Management Strategy 2019 to 2021 in accordance with Section 5.1 to 5.3 of the Public Debt Management Act number 28 of 2015 as amended. And lastly, the Fiscal Risk Statement in accordance with Section 12(1)(e) of the Fiscal Responsibility Act number 29 of 2015 as amended. Mr. Speaker, I am compelled to commence the 2019 budget presentation by offering high praises to the Almighty God, as His words say in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 13, and I quote, "In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your path." End of quote. Mr. Speaker, I'm excited and optimistic about the path our country is on at this time. We continue to record significant economic gains through sustained growth, which in turn brings increased opportunities for all our people. Mr. Speaker, I must, however, express my disappointment with our failure as a nation to make the bold step to adopt the Caribbean Court of Justice, CCJ, as the final court of appeal. Mr. Speaker, as a serious public servant, I humbly respect the wishes of the people of our country. But I must admit, I believe that we have missed an opportunity to better secure our legacy now. Not simply as Grenadians, Caraconians, and Petit Martinicans, but as Caribbean nationals. It was a clear opportunity to unshackle one of the last remaining vestiges of the colonial era, and to deepen the ties of regional unity, and most importantly, to make justice more accessible to the ordinary man, woman, and child. Personally, Mr. Speaker, I remain resolute in my opinion, and that will not change, Mr. Speaker, that the CCJ is right for us, and that the time is right for the CCJ. I am confident that we, as a region, have the capacity to operate an effective, expedient, just, and prudent court. I'm also confident that the CCJ is one of the best legacies that we can leave to our children and grandchildren. Mr. Speaker, I have stated publicly before, and I repeat it today as Prime Minister of this beloved country, I would not initiate another referendum on the CCJ. But I will, Mr. Speaker, and I repeat, I will support any future endeavor to make the CCJ Grenada's final court of appeal. That said, Mr. Speaker, we still have a mandate to take this country forward. And it is not a responsibility that we take lightly. As we forge ahead, creating a path for the sustainable development of this beautiful country, we do so with resilience as one of the key watchwords. Resilience is the ability to withstand or to recover quickly, the ability to recoil or to spring back after bending. Resilience, Mr. Speaker, cannot be overemphasized. Mr. Speaker, Her Excellency the Governor General delivered the throne speech recently, which marked the opening of the second session of the 10th Parliament. In her speech, Her Excellency eloquently pronounced that the overreaching focus of the government would be to build resilience in all its form to transform our economy. As such, Mr. Speaker, the theme chosen for the 2019 budget is as follows: building resilience, advancing social development, transforming our economy, unquote. This was not, Mr. Speaker, selected arbitrarily. It was a deliberate choice intended to adequately capture the priorities of the government at this time, and in full acknowledgement of the fact that while we experience tremendous upswing in economic activity, we must at the same time strategically position our country to recover from potential setback if they occur. Mr. Speaker, the priorities enshrined in the 2019 budget are framed within the context of the government's wider medium-term agenda, MTA, which articulates the strategic development objectives for the period 2019 to 21. The overall objectives, Mr. Speaker, of the MTA are to anchor medium-term development planning and strategic interventions to promote resilience in all its forms, economic, social, and environmental, and to accelerate inclusive, job-rich growth, as well as to reduce poverty. Mr. Speaker, what this essentially means is that we are not merely seeking economic growth that illustrates positive fiscal balances and declining debt. We are pursuing economic growth that brings real results to the citizens of this country. Economic growth that's not only reflected in the figures recorded by government statisticians and analysts, but is visible in an improved quality of life of all of us, especially those who are most vulnerable. The MTA rests on three strategic pillars or national goals, which are: 1, accelerating sustainable and inclusive economic growth; 2, enhancing social capital and citizens' well-being; 3, promoting resilient governance. Accordingly, Mr. Speaker, the budget elaborates on the policies and programs that will be pursued in 2019 that are in line with the MTA and its established developmental outcomes. Details on the MTA 2019 to 2021 can be found in the budget framework paper. Mr. Speaker, This administration is fully committed to dialogue and consultation as a means of obtaining broad consensus on matters of national importance. In this regard, I am pleased to inform this Honorable House that the series of public engagements surrounding the MTA, which preceded this budget's presentation, were tremendously successful in getting buy-in for and promoting ownership of the policies and program articulated in this MTA. All people, Mr. Speaker, must be sufficiently engaged and must willingly accept ownership of planned policies and programs if implementation is to be successful. We are indeed impressed with the depth of knowledge, resourcefulness, and understanding which reside among our people. I have the utmost confidence, therefore, Mr. Speaker, in our collective capacity to advance our nation's progress for the benefit of present and future generations. Mr. Speaker, with this introduction, I want to turn your attention to the economic developments globally, regionally, and locally to provide a context for this budget. Global and regional economic developments. Global economic performance and prospects. Mr. Speaker, according to the International Monetary Fund most recent World Economic Outlook report released last month, global growth is estimated at 3.7% in 2018 and 2019. These are downward revisions of the forecast done in April 2018, which had estimated global growth of 3.9% for both years. Mr. Speaker, the downward revision is largely based on lower projected growth for most advanced countries, especially the United States in 2019, because of the potential negative impacts of recently announced tariffs. Growth in some emerging markets and developing economies, especially oil exporting ones, has been revised up on account of projected increases in oil prices. Further details on the current global economic performance can be found in Annex 1. Regional and economic performance and prospects. Regionally, Mr. Speaker, average GDP growth in the independent countries of the Caribbean is estimated at 1.1% in 2018, roughly the same as that was in 2017. However, the increase in regional output is projected to pick up speed in 2019, averaging 3%, fueled largely by high growth rates focused in Dominica, where they're building after Hurricane, Grenada, and Guyana. Closer to home in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, ECCU, the average economic growth of 0.4% is estimated in 2018, a deceleration relative to the average growth rate of 1.75% in 2017. This was largely, Mr. Speaker, influenced by the massive economic decline estimated for Dominica in the wake of Hurricane Maria. However, a pickup is projected in 2019 with an average growth rate of 4.3%. In the non-ECCU countries, the average growth is estimated at 1.6% in 2018 and is projected to edge up to an average of 1.9% in 2019. Annex 1 again provides more details. Domestic economic performance and prospects. Mr. Speaker, Grenada's economy has been on a consistent path of economic expansion since 2013. And it is poised to experience its sixth consecutive year of growth in 2018. Economic growth of 5.2% in real terms is provisionally estimated for this year. This is fueled by expansions in the major sectors, especially construction, tourism, transport, private education, and manufacturing. Mr. Speaker, Grenada remains the fastest growing economy in the region. averaging real growth of 5.0% since 2013. And growth in 2019 is conservatively estimated, Mr. Speaker, to be about 4.2%. Mr. Speaker, the preliminary results of the 2018 Labor Force Survey indicate that the unemployment rate has fallen by 2.7 percentage points, moving from 23.6% in December 2017 to 20.9% in June 2018, the latest period of which data is available. Mr. Speaker, it is important to point out that the unemployment rate could fall further by year end, aided by government recent addition of another batch of 800 Imani trainees. And additionally, 500 young men are benefiting from the Empower initiative. Another 800 persons have also been employed in the housing construction brigade as environmental wardens. Fiscal performance. Mr. Speaker, Grenada's fiscal position continues to be strong, with an expected primary surplus after grants of 6.2% of GDP at the end of 2018, compared to 5.7% in 2017. This performance, Mr. Speaker, is backed by continuous reforms in both the Inland Revenue Department and the Customs and Excise Division, as well as government's continuous efforts to reduce its overall expenditure and increase economic activity. By the end of 2018, Mr. Speaker, the following results relative to the approved budget are expected. Current revenue of $747.2 million compared to a target of $710.4. Grants of $102.6 million compared to a target of $148 million. Current expenditure of $594.6 million compared to a target of $607.1 million. Capital expenditure of $118.9 million compared to a target of $171.3 million. The Custom and Excise Division collections are expected to reach $367.8 million compared to a target of $344 million, an overperformance of $23.8 million. Similarly, the Indian Revenue Department is estimated to collect $353.8 million compared to a target of $338 million, an overperformance of $15.8 million. Mr. Speaker, therefore, let me take this opportunity to commend the Revenue Collection Agency for their continued drive to improve compliance. Further details on the 2018 economic performance can be found in Annex 1 of this budget statement. Public debt. Mr. Speaker, public debt as a ratio of GDP has progressively declined in the past 5 years, decreasing from 108% of GDP in 2013 to an estimated 62.7% by the end of 2018. It is projected to be further reduced to 55% of GDP by the end of 2020, surpassing the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank target of 60%, 10 years ahead of the 2030 deadline, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is important for the nation to appreciate the process undertaken to project these debt numbers. The Ministry of Finance conducted a debt sustainable analysis, which determined the government's ability to sustain its current debt levels. The analysis was then used to inform the medium-term debt management strategy that is laid before this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, the 2018 budget presentation was therefore historic because for the first time, a debt management strategy was laid in our Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I'm extremely happy to report that all of our debt management activities for the past year were consistent with the medium-term debt management strategy 2018 to 2020. Further details on debt outstanding as of December 31st, 2018, and the medium-term debt management strategy can be found in Annex F of the estimates of revenue and expenditure and the report that's been laid before Parliament. Mr. Speaker, having provided the international, regional, and local context for the 2019 budget, I wish to turn my attention to the estimates of revenue and expenditure. Mr. Speaker, I wish to signal that the 2019 estimates of revenue and expenditure were prepared in accordance with the Fiscal Responsibility Law, FRL. For the first time, we have included for publication the details of our compliance with the fiscal rules and targets, which can be found in Annex 2 of the budget statement. Budget and financing summary. Mr. Speaker, the 2019 estimates of revenue and expenditure provide for the total expenditure, including principal repayments and public debt, of $1,134,013,956, Mr. Speaker. This budget, therefore, is summarized as follows. Recurrent revenue of $780.4 million. Recurrent expenditure of $637.8 million. Current account surplus of $142.7 million. Capital expenditure of $196.4 million. Primary surplus after grants of $201.9 million. Overall surplus after grants of $129.9 million. Principal repayment amortization, $299.8 million. Mr. Speaker, consistent with the theme of this budget presentation, as I expressed earlier, I would now move into the specific of each thematic area. Fiscal resilience. Mr. Speaker, it's well known that Grenada is a regional front runner in building resilience to climate change and natural disasters. Our efforts to successfully incorporate disaster relief provisions, that's hurricane clauses, into some of our loan instruments are well documented, and others in the region are now following. This was a major step towards building fiscal resilience. Speaker, the enactment of the FRL in 2015, as amended in 2016, provide testament of our commitment to build fiscal resilience. The FRL has provided an important anchor for sound fiscal policy and has contributed to a much stronger fiscal and debt position. The FRL not only seeks to entrench fiscal discipline through the rules that are enshrined, but it also mandates the establishment of a contingency fund upon attaining a debt to GDP ratio of 55%. This fund is geared towards assisting response and recovery efforts in the event of a natural disaster. Mr. Speaker, we are living within our means, as everyone should, which is allowing us to generate fiscal surpluses that are being saved and invested to build buffers against economic shocks. In short, we are providing another avenue to build our fiscal resilience. Mr. Speaker, Grenada continues to receive high commendation for the bold steps taken to entrench fiscal discipline. Most recently, in May 2018, we hosted a team from the International Monetary Fund for an Article 4 consultation. The fund commended Grenada for its continued adherence to the FRL and the establishment of an independent fiscal oversight committee. Mr. Speaker, the IMF stated, and I like to quote, the executive directors commended the authorities for implementing sound policies leading to a strong economic and fiscal performance and sustainable debt reduction, end of quote. Mr. Speaker, it is important to note that a lot of the external support Grenada is receiving due to maintaining good fiscal discipline and staying within the provisions of the FRL, Mr. Speaker, that is working to our favor. It must be known, therefore, that any deviation by government which breaks the FRL, Mr. Speaker, will result in the loss of enormous potential financial support. Mr. Speaker, if we are to sustain the current pace of development, we simply cannot lose this type of funding. The Caribbean Catastrophic Risk Insurance. Mr. Speaker, as we streamline our resilient efforts, there is need to ensure that adequate safeguards are put in place to enable speedy recovery in the event of a natural disaster. Therefore, added to the contingency fund already established, the government is party to the Caribbean Catastrophic Risk Insurance Facility segregated portfolio. To date, we have acquired insurance coverage under the earthquake, excess rainfall, hurricanes, and tropical cyclone policies. Payout on these policies are triggered by factors such as rainfall levels and wind speed, which can accelerate the payout of claims. Financial sector resilience. Mr. Speaker, while we as a government are continuously assessing how we manage the country's purse, we cannot lose sight of the ongoing threat of de-risking that confronts our financial services sector, with potentially disruptive and damaging impacts to our economy. We will sustain efforts to mitigate this threat through national and regional initiatives that identify concrete solutions. Mr. Speaker, we must give serious consideration to the issue of deposit insurance, which will protect the deposits of clients should banks become insolvent. This is a critical component of improving fiscal resilience. I use this opportunity, therefore, to commend ECCB for leading on this very important issue. We'll therefore take guidance from them, and we'll work collaboratively with our neighbors to address this critical issue. Mr. Speaker, government recognizes the increasingly important role that credit unions and other non-bank financial institutions are playing in a deepening financial intermediation and will continue to encourage their growth and development. Accordingly, strengthening the anti-money laundering and combating the financing of terrorism frameworks would be a focus of the Grenada Authority for the Regulation of Financial Institutions, GAFIN, during 2019. Moreover, we are working with the ECCB to enhance the regulation and supervision of the non-banking financial institutions in our country. 5.3, infrastructure resilience. Mr. Speaker, fiscal resilience cannot be separated from physical resilience. Accordingly, we are accelerating climate-smart development policies and programs, including upscaling investments in climate-resilient infrastructure. The recent establishment of a dedicated ministry with responsibility for building climate resilience is testimony to this commitment. Moreover, in May this year, we requested assistance from the IMF to conduct a climate change policy assessment on Grenada. The assessment would take stock of our plans to manage climate change from the perspective of macroeconomic implications and suggest macro-relevant reforms that that could strengthen the likelihood of success. Mr. Speaker, we believe that climate change policy assessment will further crystallize our resilience framework and act as a catalyst in mobilizing donor support. Our efforts have not gone unnoticed. Grenada has been successful in securing a World Bank loan of $65 million at highly concessionable rates to support climate and fiscal resilience. Mr. Speaker, the terms are very attractive. It's a 10-year grace. That means no payment for 10 years. And repayment over 30 years at an interest rate of 1.4%. Almost free money, is it? We have already received 30 million of that amount, Mr. Speaker, which works out to be almost 80 million EC dollars. Mr. Speaker, if we break this FRL, we would automatically lose the other $35 million US, which works out almost 94 million EC, which is the remaining balance of that very soft loan. Mr. Speaker, this loan facility is the first of its kind in the region. No other country in the region has already got any money from this. Mr. Speaker, through the Green Climate Fund, Grenada has secured significant grant money now for a number of transformative projects, which include: 1, climate resilient water sector project valued at $125 million. This project is intended to make our water sector more resilient by addressing the critical need to increase water collection and storage in the north of Grenada, with more effective distribution in the south, where demand is greatest and which is most vulnerable to water shortages. Mr. Speaker, the infrastructural works for this project are considerable, and it will generate significant jobs for people when it commences in the first quarter of 2019. Mr. Speaker, we put ourselves at risk of losing these funds if we act irresponsibly and undermine the current fiscal position. I don't believe any Grenadian would want to see that happen. Climate resilient city. Number 2. Mr. Speaker, this is a project that will establish the town of St. George as the first climate resilient city in the Caribbean. That climate resilient intervention proposed will include the carénage, the southern corridor between the town of St. George and the airport, the St. George's University, the Morris Bishop International Airport, the implementation of a sewage treatment plant, an urban development plan including traffic congestion solutions. And although not in St. George's, but an area identified as highly vulnerable, the Grenville Coastal Road. The potential, Mr. Speaker, value of these projects is at $350 million EC dollars. And Mr. Speaker, we're talking grant money. Activities under this initiative are expected to materialize in the medium term, Mr. Speaker. I must emphasize here again that we stand to risk to lose these funds if we break that Fiscal Responsibility Act. Mr. Speaker, in addition, under the Global Environment Facility, Grenada is one of the 10 Caribbean countries participating in a US $20.7 million project implemented by the United Nations Environmental Program and United Nations Development Program. The Integrating Water, Land, and Ecosystem Management in the Caribbean and Small Developing States project provides an integrated approach to watershed and coastal area management addressing the many challenges related to sustainable water and land management. We must continuously demonstrate, Mr. Speaker, a commitment to upholding our FRL if we want to continue to benefit from these funding. Mr. Speaker, as we methodically develop the pipeline of bankable projects, we believe we'll not only start reducing our vulnerability to climate change, but we'll also be addressing many of our national development priorities. In doing so, Mr. Speaker, we are also creating opportunities for further economic development and creation of more green jobs, which will help to protect and restore the environment. Mr. Speaker, the development of the renewable energy sector, which we are firmly committed to, will also generate green jobs that will touch every economic sector of our country. Mr. Speaker, as we take these important steps to safeguard the environment and to ensure the sustainable development of our country, we must also maintain fiscal discipline and, as I said before, build fiscal resilience. In so doing, we will create a better Grenada, not for a select few, but for all Grenadians, Caracunians, and Petite Martiniquans. Finally, Mr. Speaker, in that area, on the subject of global leadership in climate change arena, Grenada's international presence and influence continue to grow. As president of the 4th SITS-DOC Assembly, Grenada's voice will be heard consistently. We'll continue to lobby the international community to make available financial and technical assistance that is tailored to the unique circumstances of Grenada and other small developing states in our quest to bolster resilience to climate change and its impacts. Building code and land use policy. Mr. Speaker, fundamental to infrastructural resilience is the need to address deficiency in our building code and to have a fully functional land use policy. Long overdue. Grenada and other sub-regional countries are currently engaged in discussions with the OECS Secretariat with a view to reviewing and standardizing building codes throughout the sub-region. While we seek to collectively address the issue of our building codes at the OECS level, it is important to strengthen our efforts on the national front. Government plans to incrementally implement the recommendations identified in an assessment that examined the issue to be addressed in a proposed national land use policy for Grenada. Mr. Speaker, with all our efforts, we cannot prevent hurricanes, floods, or natural disasters. However, we can ensure that people and communities are better prepared and more resilient to withstand and recover from those impacts. Mr. Speaker, therefore, building social resilience goes hand in hand with building fiscal infrastructure and infrastructural resilience. As such, I move to the second thematic area, advancing social development. Mr. Speaker, Grenada's history has shown that we are very strong, resilient people. However, we are facing unprecedented times that can dampen the strongest of spirits. Therefore, it's incumbent upon government to improve and expand its social policies and to protect the vulnerable among us. Mr. Speaker, allow me to expand more specifically in the following areas: housing, gender and family affairs, juvenile justice, social safety nets, health, justice system and national security, and an update on British American Insurance, BICO, and CLICO International Insurance, and of course, pension to public officers. Last not at least, Mr. Speaker. Housing. Mr. Speaker, to date, we have constituted 12 housing work brigades throughout our country. The brigades are responsible for the repairs, construction, and rebuilding of houses only for vulnerable citizens. This activity has not only provided for persons with housing needs, but also created 180 new jobs. Work has also commenced on the Chinese low-income housing projects in Dumfries and Carriacou, Diamond in St. Mark's, Corinth in St. David's, Villa in St. Patrick's, and will soon start in Bushejou in St. George's. Mr. Speaker, low-income homeowners will get assistance to make their homes more resilient to climate change under the the Green Climate Fund funded Enhanced Direct Access Project. Grenada is one of the 3 countries which has secured grant funding to the value of $54 million for this community-based, private sector, and government-based climate resilient initiatives. This project is expected to roll out in 2019. We must stay the course, therefore, Mr. Speaker, with our FRL. Otherwise, we could lose significant help in that area. Mr. Speaker, we also are working with a private company to develop low-income homes for hundreds of our citizens across the country. Plans are in place to begin this project in 2019. Gender and family affairs. Mr. Speaker, government is taking a multi-pronged approach to combating domestic violence and sexually related crimes, particularly among our children. The Ministry of Social Development, Mr. Speaker, is raising awareness of this sexual abuse through its, and I quote, "I respect you, you respect me, valuing boundaries," unquote, campaign, which targets students in Form 4 and 5 throughout the length and breadth of our country. Mr. Speaker, the Royal Grenada Police Force has established a special victims unit embedded within the Criminal Investigation Department with a specific focus on addressing sexually related crimes, domestic violence, and child abuse cases. This unit, Mr. Speaker, will work to prevent and investigate such crimes and provide victim support. Mr. Speaker, I recall in 2018 budget presentation, a sex offenders register was promised. I wish to assure this Honorable House and the people of this country that we remain committed to this initiative. We're therefore currently reviewing the various models with a view to selecting the most appropriate one that can be adapted to fit our national context. By the first half of 2019, that legislation should be before the Parliament. Mr. Speaker, on the broad subject of gender issues, government remains firmly committed to gender mainstreaming in our decision-making and developmental planning to ensure that our developmental interventions are gender-sensitive and responsive to the differentiated realities and needs of men and women. Juvenile justice. Mr. Speaker, we are committed to helping at-risk youth through the establishment of an improved gender-responsive juvenile justice system, which includes the full operationalism of the Grand Bacalet Juvenile Rehabilitation and Treatment Center. There are several components to the awakening of special potential by investing in restoration and empowerment called Aspire of this youth project. The REACH project, which is one such component, was recently launched at Her Majesty's Prison. It provides for rehabilitation and reintegration support for young inmates between the ages of 18 and 35 who are approaching the time for release. Another component is the Actively Committed and Empowerment Youth Community Project called ACE, which we will implement in 2019. This is intended, Mr. Speaker, to be an integrated 18-month training program in life skills literacy, and other areas, targeting 25 at-risk youth under the age of 30 in the Mount Horn community in the parish of St. Andrews. The plan is to be replicated in other parishes so that we can significantly impact the at-risk youth population in a positive way. Social safety nets. Mr. Speaker, I wish to humbly report that Grenada has successfully completed the safety net advancement project, which sought to accomplish the following developmental objectives. 1, strengthen the basic architecture of Consolidated Conditional Cash Transfer Program, which is known as SEED, and the capacity of the Ministry of Social Development to implement this important program. Secondly, to expand coverage of poor households receiving cash transfers. Thirdly, improve educational outcomes of poor children and the health monitoring of vulnerable households. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, in September of this year, the World Bank assessed the final 2 development indicators for this project and determined that we have successfully met this important target. This resulted in the disbursement of $550,000 to the state of Grenada. I therefore must commend the Minister of Social Development and our team for this special accomplishment. Mr. Speaker, as promised in the 2018 budget presentation, the government has increased the payment to the elderly household under the SEED program by $100. This underscores our commitment to improving the lives of our citizens, particularly those who are most vulnerable. We'll consider further increases in SEED payments if our fiscal space allows. Health. Mr. Speaker, it is no secret that we have challenges in the health sector, which must be addressed, chief among them being the human resources for health. Cabinet has approved a human resources plan for the health policy and also a plan for the health sector. And a steering committee has been constituted to begin implementation of these initiatives in 2019. A clear framework for recruitment, professional development, and succession planning would also be provided. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, government is committed to improving the physical infrastructure in its network of 36 health facilities throughout the length and breadth of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, with the aim of institutionalizing climate-resilient technologies. Work would commence on a number of these facilities in 2019 with the implementation of Phase 2 of the Smart Healthcare Facilities in the Eastern Caribbean project. This project is a collaboration of the Government of Grenada, the Pan American Health Organization, and the Department for International Development. Mr. Speaker, just last month, we commissioned the retrofitted Princess Alice Hospital, which is now recognized as a smart healthcare facility. Retrofitting of the Hillsborough Health Center and the Princess Royal Hospital in Carriacou will commence by the second quarter of 2019. Mr. Speaker, through the 11th EDF, the health sector budget, through the 11th EDF of the health sector budget, we are able to access grant financing for the reconstruction of the Grove Medical Center. Construction of these health facilities is expected to commence before the end of 2018. Work will also continue in the second phase of the General Hospital project, and this is expected to be completed by the third quarter of 2019. Mr. Speaker, government is well aware that proper health care goes beyond having excellent facilities. We must also have adequate equipment to provide care. Medication must be available. A proper management system must be in place, and healthcare workers must demonstrate a good attitude and a compassionate one with patients. These are all areas we must address vigorously, and we must do it together. Mr. Speaker, equal access to health care continues to be a priority of this government as it strives to improve a system of care that provides equitable access for every citizen, regardless of one's ability to pay. This is arguably a key factor in improving the well-being of all our citizens. Mr. Speaker, government continues to work diligently on the creation of a national health insurance. The Health Economic Unit of the University of the West Indies St. Augustine campus is providing technical assistance to develop the framework for the NHI. To date, a number of deliveries have been received, including the proposal for the basket of services to be covered by the NHI, a macroeconomic analysis of fiscal space for financing the NHI, and a governance framework that has been approved by Cabinet. Mr. Speaker, data is critical for decision making, and the establishment of an effective and efficient service delivery mechanism that meets the needs of citizens is equally important. Therefore, the Ministry of Health will continue work on the implementation of the electronic medical record system in 2019. Justice system and national security. Mr. Speaker, the justice system is a fundamental pillar that supports the social fabric of our society. It is well known that in recent times we have experienced some challenges with respect with the housing of our courts, leading to serious delays. Compounding this is the existing backlogs in the court system, which is a crucial area of concern. However, Mr. Speaker, these challenges are not insurmountable. A temporary solution has been found, and we continue to work assiduously with the legal fraternity to bring permanent resolution to those issues. Mr. Speaker, in the area of national security, the Royal Grenada Police Force will continue to efficiently execute its law enforcement mandate so that Grenada remains one of the safest, if not the safest country within the sub-region. Mr. Speaker, reported crime in Grenada contracted by 7% for the year to date, and the detection rate is 74%. These are notable achievements and can be attributed to the dedicated and committed staff of the RGPF, as well as the constantly improving relationship and collaboration between the RGPF and the communities throughout our tri-island states. Mr. Speaker, as we promised in the 2018 budget presentation, e-passport was introduced in 2018. This passport offers additional security measures and showcases national pride through the images depicted throughout. Since the launch of this new e-passport in July, 5,320 passports have been issued. Mr. Speaker, recognizing the significant cost of the e-passport, government has been subsidizing this passport by more than 50% of the actual cost. However, Mr. Speaker, this is not sustainable. And over the medium term in 2019, we'll have to implement the real cost of this most secure travel document. Mr. Speaker, security measures at Her Majesty's Prison have been augmented with the installation of an X-ray scanning equipment and a comprehensive security surveillance and detection system that includes more than 80 cameras. Inmates continue to be productively engaged through involvement in the prison reform farm program, land clearing for farmers, and improving their academic qualifications. Mr. Speaker, government's emphasis on youth is also evident at Her Majesty's prisons. We are moving to create, therefore, Mr. Speaker, a youth wing that will house youth offenders, keeping them apart from the influence of other more seasoned persons. This project will be jointly funded by the government and the Caribbean Development Bank, and is expected to commence in 2019. Update on BICO and CLICO. Mr. Speaker, regarding BICO specifically, following the first distribution to policyholders, a second distribution is planned during the fiscal year, was planned in the fiscal year of 2018. This is primarily as a result of the judicial manager's ability to liquidate property assets in the region. Litigation against the former executives of BICO continues with a summary judgment of the court in Trinidad and Tobago that was delivered 2 months ago, ordering the former executive chairman of CL Financial to repay $122 million to BICO. The September ruling will allow for further action of the judicial managers regarding property and assets. Mr. Speaker, the legal action from the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, of which Grenada is a part, is seeking a date for hearing on matters pertaining to CLICO. That was proven to be more difficult. The hearing was postponed since April 2018 due to various factors. The urgent request for a hearing date has recently been acknowledged by the court, and we are waiting further guidance. And now turn to the last item, pension to public officers. Mr. Speaker, we cannot begin to seriously address social development matters without tackling the vexing issues of pension for public officers. Mr. Speaker, since this is the first time I'm speaking publicly on this very important issue, as it relates to the industrial climate, I need to put it in the right context. I need to also remind workers that some who are encouraging chaos and marching with them today had an opportunity to solve those problems before, but never lifted a finger. It's important. And those who are calling us employers, who are advising them not to go back to the table unless certain things are done, have their bread butter. I hope and pray they would help us when we need help. Mr. Speaker, this government record on pay and benefits for working class of this country since returning into office in 2013 has been outstanding. This is the most that the new National Party or any other government has done for workers in the general and public officers in general, in particular, and more than anyone has done since 1984. Let's recall, Mr. Speaker, that under this government, the Labor Relations and Employment Act were passed into law in 1999. Both these laws strengthened trade unions and gave them more rights to unionize and to the unionized and ununionized workers. And we are now making further improvements to those. It must be noted, Mr. Speaker, that it was this government that increased the grant to the Trade Union Council by 38%, Mr. Speaker. No one did it before. We have extended the rights to job security with the appointment of 400 of teachers and public workers like nurses. Some happened even within the structural adjustment program, Mr. Speaker. We have paid the largest pay increases to public workers in the period of the most acute economic and financial crisis in this world and the region has faced. without sending home one single worker, Mr. Speaker. We have to get it straight. We have to get it straight, Mr. Speaker. I've heard enough. Between February 2013, I have not spoken before, I'm speaking now. Between February 2013 to now, we have paid public workers, teachers, nurses, police, and other public workers over $110 million in cash. In addition to salaries and other benefits, Mr. Speaker, and not one worker got up money a day late at the end of the month. Let's get it straight. We have done more on social spending than any other government since 1990. The Needy Assistance Program, the House Repair Program, the Seed Program, uniform allowance for students, Mr. Speaker, poor people, children that could not go to school, Mr. Speaker. We have recently restored pensions for public officers, joining the service between April 4th, 1984 and February 22nd, 1985, paying over $7.7 million, Mr. Speaker, to 56 workers. Where are the voices, Mr. Speaker? Where are those voices? Mr. Speaker, in 2013, with initiative of the leadership of the union at that time, we removed income tax for the first time on retrenchment pay and severance pay. Previous government refused to do it, but they're marching today with public workers. So they care for public workers now. In January 2016, we removed personal income tax on pension, including NIS, Mr. Speaker, the first government to do that. Between 2008, Mr. Speaker, now we have created far more jobs than any other political party who held political office, dropping the unemployment rate from 42% that I just explained to approximately 21%, Mr. Speaker. Government remains, Mr. Speaker, resolute in its position that this issue must be resolved in the interests of the workers and the interests of the country. Mr. Speaker, in July, payment that we honored to the pensioners was critical in our view, necessary, morally correct. Mr. Speaker, therefore, it is critical to note that the government team, led by the Cabinet Secretary and the leadership of the trade union movement, continue to dialogue and work together to achieve a resolution that is in the best interest of the country and all its citizens. Affordability and sustainability are the key considerations. In addition, the welfare of our children and their education and the pain of the parents also must be paramount among all of us. The future of this country is at stake. Mr. Speaker, we have come a long way, Mr. Speaker, but we have miles to go. Government stands ready and willing to continue to engage the unions to determine the most fiscally prudent pathway to address the post-1985 workers. We remain committed, Mr. Speaker, to offering the best possible package to the workers within the context of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Mr. Speaker, acceding to the union demands of 25% advance payment of pension, called gratuity, within the current construct, I must repeat, within the current construct, will cripple the country financially. It is simply not feasible, given our current and projected revenue stream, to meet these demands and to further sustain them over the long term. Regional and international organizations have cautioned us that pension program must be managed. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we must be fiscally prudent with our decisions, or we run the risk of undoing the tremendous gains we have made in recent years and to lose considerable funding we have acquired through prudent fiscal discipline. Mr. Speaker, I don't believe anyone in this country want to see us take a decision that between January and February, March this next year, that we lose 94 million EC dollars because of the decision that we take today. I don't believe any Grenadian, Caracunian, Petit Martinique want to see this. In addition, Mr. Speaker, just want to point out, a 10-point fact sheet on pension is provided at Annex 3 to help broaden the public understanding of this important issue. Mr. Speaker, this government must be known, must apply the principles of universal social conscience and social justice for all. We cannot give all the resources of the state to who have a voice and who are represented by trade unions. We have to look at the welfare of thousands of working people who are unorganized and have no real voice. We must speak for them, Mr. Speaker. We have to take care of the hundreds of single mothers who are low skilled and unable to enter the job market. We have to look after the thousands of unemployed youth. We have to take care of hundreds of elderly citizens who we have to care for in their homes. We have to take care of the young men who find themselves in trouble. We have to give them a second chance. We have to train them to become law-abiding and productive citizens, Mr. Speaker. And we should not allow them to languish in prison without hope and opportunity. We have to help them, these hundreds of young people, to get a better life. Mr. Speaker, government, therefore, cannot give only to those who are employed with the state and are organized. Trade unions ought to subscribe to the principles, and I repeat, of social justice. Trade unions should not act as though they are the only ones entitled to resources of the state. There are other people in this country. There must be social justice for all, Mr. Speaker. The Christian principle of looking out for your neighbor is the heart of the Christian belief, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on another note, I must say this, Mr. Speaker. If I don't say it, I'll be a hypocrite. The issue of paying workers for days on which industrial action was arbitrarily taken is not fiscally. It is fiscally irresponsible to do it, morally bankrupt, and politically unwise. Let's get that clear. Mr. Speaker, the government cannot agree to such. Workers choose to withhold their labor. The union should have a strike fund in place and should therefore be responsible for paying the lost wages of those workers, Mr. Speaker. You say you're not working for me and I pay you. How could that be fair? Almighty God will not bless us if we do this, Mr. Speaker. In other words, Mr. Speaker, we fully agree with the workers, They must be paid, but not by government, by the union, Mr. Speaker. I now turn, Mr. Speaker, to transforming our economy, modernizing the public sector. Mr. Speaker, we cannot speak about transforming our economy without addressing public sector modernization in a real way. Although this concept was a subject of numerous discussions over a decade ago, we must amplify our efforts to ensure that goods and services are efficiently and effectively deployed to our citizens. Accordingly, we have agreed to take a phased approach to this process. Towards this end, Mr. Speaker, the government has reached out to the World Bank for support, which gave life to the Grenada Digital Governance for Resilience project. Mr. Speaker, the objective is to build a smart, resilient government that adopts a whole-of-government approach to the implementation of critical public policies and services by 1, modernizing public service management, 2, leveraging digital technology to deliver integrated services to the citizens and to promote sectoral transformation, 3, forging inclusive strategic partnerships to provide change and to drive reforms. This project will identify, improve, and fortify the core of institutional functions, processes, and information systems that constitute the backbone for the development of e-government services to the citizens of our country. It will also lay the foundation for critical public sector systems that keep the government functional, including in times of natural catastrophic incidents and other challenges, reducing wastage and corruption in the public service. Mr. Speaker, I must speak very strongly about the level of corrupt and wastage practices that is prevalent across the government service. It is quite disturbing, Mr. Speaker, and I cannot in good conscience, and as caretaker of this country's resources, turn a blind eye to this. I'm not supposed to speak about it. Mr. Speaker, the key to addressing this is to first accepting that there is in fact a problem. I have spoken publicly on many occasions about this, most recently at a town hall meeting in New York that attracted quite a furor. Mr. Speaker, in this honorable House today, I apologize to the hardworking and honest public officers who felt offended or grieved by my comments. However, Mr. Speaker, I cannot apologize to those who are in fact misusing public funds, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, given the pervasiveness of this problem, government intends to take definitive action to address this problem. Can't just talk about it. We have to deal with it. The Audit Department will be working more aggressively, looking closely into areas where the possible activities exist and are prevalent. A disciplinary process will be implemented for public officers found to be misusing public funds, and we'll review the management structure in the public service to make changes that will reduce the potential for corrupt practices. In addition, we'll institute as a matter of policy the rotation of public officers working in key areas to reduce opportunities for complacency and corruption. It is imperative, Mr. Speaker, that we take swift action. We simply cannot allow corruption and wastage to continue. It's eating of the heart, of the soul of our country. The public officers who provide selfless service, Mr. Speaker, must be commended and must be given much more than they're getting. And there are so many of them who are producing, but they don't get the benefits for their production. Mr. Speaker, we must do something for those who are giving those special services. Education and human resource development. Mr. Speaker, Benjamin Franklin once said, and I quote, "An investment in knowledge pays the best interest." End of quote. Government is of the view that no truer words have been spoken, and therefore for the year 2018, a total of 173 scholarships valued at $48,526,000 $1,330.33 were awarded for higher education opportunities. These awards, Mr. Speaker, include economic cost bursaries to the University of the West Indies and Island scholarships in the amount of $2,347,384.96. The words of Benjamin Franklin are evident as Grenada recorded notable improvements in our students' performance in 19 of the 13 Caribbean secondary education subjects, Mr. Speaker, in 2018. Grenada outperformed the regional average in 16 subjects. At this juncture, therefore, I wish to commend the hard-working principal, teachers, and education officials of the nation, and the parents who support their efforts, and to you, the students, to continue to make us very proud. Mr. Speaker, we continue to work on the employment status of our teachers, with a further 121 teachers being regularized in 2018. We also continue to work to extend, refurbish, and in some instances, construct various learning institutions. Under the Basic Needs Trust Fund program, St. Teresa Primary School was constructed. Land was secured for the construction of the Paradise Preschool, and 13 primary school libraries were upgraded or constructed in 2018. The Holy Cross RC School in Munich is expected to be completed by the end. Mr. Speaker, under the Grenada Education Enhancement Project, work is expected to be done on the St. David's Catholic Secondary School, the Grenada Seventh-day Adventist Comprehensive Secondary, the Presentation Brothers College, and the Bishop's College in Carriacou. Skills development. Mr. Speaker, we must accept the fact that everyone is not academically inclined. As such, it is critical to develop a sustainable technical and vocational skills structure which is aligned to national priorities, labor market needs, and the broader needs of the economy of this country. It is our intention to develop this structural approach in 2019. Efforts in this regard have commenced with the establishment of a National Skills Development Institute in Snellhall in St. Patrick's. This skill development curriculum of this institute will include furniture making and construction activities. The furniture making component will produce school furnishing in the first instance. In excess of $700,000 have been expended on this project to date. During our budget consultation with youth, skills development was strongly advocated. Therefore, government is committed to establishing at least 2 new skills centers in 2019. One of these will be located in St. David's, providing clothing and textile and construction training. The other skills center is expected to be located in Riverside in St. Patrick's, focusing on clothing and textile manufacturing as well as crop and poultry production. The clothing and textile initiatives would initially target the production of school uniforms at various centers, which will be responsible for providing uniforms for students who receive Uniform Assistance Program. This will promote the development of skills for people, while at the same time creating natural synergies with an existing government program. These activities, Mr. Speaker, are expected to create permanent jobs for young people, particularly in the rural communities. In addition to the textile and clothing centers, Mr. Speaker, government also plans to create skill centers for furniture making, which will be used to produce furniture for government departments. This particular initiative will help to reduce government expenditure on furniture purchases over the long term, while creating tremendous job opportunities for people. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, in partnership with New Life Organization, the government will deliver 13 certified skills programs targeted at young adults 25 years and older. Cabinet has approved a budget of $893,000 plus for this training, which is expected to be repeated. Mr. Speaker, the National Training Agency, NTA, is preparing to host a Grenada Skills Competition in the first quarter of 2019. The competition, modeled on this World Skills International, is aimed at increasing innovation in growing occupational and emerging areas. Additionally, the NTA is involved in the design and implementation of the UK aid-funded Youth Skills Economic Growth Project of the Eastern Caribbean Program. This 4-year program is intended to produce a better trained and inclusive workforce. Our disadvantaged youth, especially those who are physically or otherwise challenged, will benefit from this program, which will also provide apprenticeship in growth, areas for economic development, and build a national training capacity. Mr. Speaker, under the Vocational Skills Training Program of the recently completed Market Access and Rural Enterprise Program called MAREP, a total of 722 young persons were enrolled, 216 males and 506 females. In September, a total of 482 trainees, 117 males, 365 females completed MAREP. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, through the support provided by the program, 191 trainees, 59 males, 132 females were employed. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, a total of 31 persons, 15 males, 16 females, received professional development training from the UWI Open Campus in Grenada in 10 subject areas. Exchange visits were also facilitated for 10 youths in the areas of aquaponics and hydroponics, queen bee rearing, high-value fruits and vegetable production, and butchery and meat processing. Grant funding was provided also, Mr. Speaker, to 84 community organizations and informal groups under the Rural Investment Fund, a component of MAREP, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, business support services were also provided to beneficiaries in the form of extension support, business plan support, and training. 8 projects were received for approval under the Rural Financial Services Line of Credit initiative through the submission of business plans to the Grenada Development Bank. Mr. Speaker, youth development. Mr. Speaker, the engagement of our youth was a critical part of the budget consultative process this year. The theme, transforming the economy through youth development, guided that engagement process, and I take this opportunity to address some of these issues raised at the consultation while explaining our plans for meeting those needs. Business support centers, Mr. Speaker. During our interaction with the youth, it was made clear that there is a need for funding and general business support. Towards this end, the Ministry of Youth, through the implementation of Youth Enterprise Initiative, would seek to establish business support centers at strategic locations throughout the entire country. Mr. Speaker, the concept of youth cooperatives was also discussed, and it has the potential to provide lucrative job opportunities for young people. The New Imani program. Mr. Speaker, the New Imani program continues to be an avenue to provide for the training of our young people, to enable them to transition into sustainable employment. Mr. Speaker, up till recently, government single-handedly bore the cost of the Imani program. However, I must commend the private sector for coming on board with government to agree to pay 50% of the stipend for Imani trainees. Moreover, a specific time frame for seamless transition of trainees to the world of work is high on our agenda and will be finalized in 2019. Mr. Speaker, the issue of excessive non-productive time among our young people, especially young men, is an area of concern, which was also raised during the youth consultation. As a caring and concerned government, we designed the Empower program to specifically address the challenges facing those young men. The Empower program was therefore launched in October 2018. Mr. Speaker, in sports, we have seen the success of many of our top athletes and sportsmen in 2018 and continue to see more progress in this area. Mr. Speaker, we can only hope that these achievements will help to inspire the youth of our nation to work hard at the respective sporting discipline. We continue to work at a community level to nurture our sporting talents. culture, and arts. In the area of culture and arts, we see opportunities available, and we like to provide the resources necessary for ensuring the opportunities created for all the people of our land. We have seen the vast expression of interest among our young people relative to other sectors. Therefore, government will seek to provide avenues through the following area. The Simone Cultural and Development Center. This set within the confines of our rural community. This will be the mecca of Grenada's culture. Work is scheduled to begin, Mr. Speaker, on this facility during 2019. The old facility has now been cleared. The establishment of music labs in secondary school to make available the necessary infrastructure for young talents to be harnessed at the school level. In 2019, the first such lab will be rolled out at the St. Joseph Convent in Grenville. Agriculture. Mr. Speaker, we'll continue to make strategic investment in the agricultural sector. Government has committed in total $145 million to be spent on 3 major initiatives in the sector, which will commence in 2019. Mr. Speaker, these include AgriCom project, which is jointly funded by the World Bank and the Government of Grenada at a value of $12 million. The Climate Smart Agriculture and Rural Enterprise Program, SIAP, funded by the International Fund for Agricultural Development, the Caribbean Development Bank, and the Government of Grenada, to the tune of $38 million. A further $95 million will be invested in the Agricultural Feeder Roads project, funded through the Kuwaiti Fund for Arab Economic Development and the OPEC Fund for International Development. Mr. Speaker, it is necessary to highlight this information to provide a synopsis on the focus being placed on the agricultural sector. Mr. Speaker, government understands the vulnerability of the families in the agricultural and fishery sectors, and therefore it's important to take steps to assist with the mitigation of these issues. In 2018, therefore, government approved the pilot of an insurance facility, the Caribbean Ocean Assets Sustainability Facility, COAST, to support the development of the fishery sector. COAST is envisioned to support climate resilience by providing insurance to help protect the sector from severe weather impact while promoting resilience to a changing climate and encouraging the conservation of the marine environment. Rural development, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, government considers rural development to a major pillar in our economic transformation. The 6-year MARIP program, which sought to reduce poverty in rural communities, concluded on September 30, 2018. And with a budget of $8.5 million, the program was commissioned by government with counterpart funding from the International Fund for Agricultural Development and the Caribbean Development Bank. Mr. Speaker, as I indicated before, SIAP is a successor to this program. Based on lessons learned from MARIP, a rural development office has been established, creating a single coordinating umbrella for a 2 flagship poverty reduction program, that is the BNTF program and SIAP. The rationale is to adopt a more integrated approach to rural development issues to strengthen the coordinating framework for poverty reduction and inclusive growth in Grenada. Mr. Speaker, also, the enterprise business development component, which is geared at supporting ongoing and startup business in rural areas through capacity building, technical services, and financing with a focus on youth. The Climate Smart Agriculture CSA component, which will be a major investment in the agricultural sector, is aimed at increasing the sustainability of small farmers through the adaptation of climate-smart agricultural facilities. Mr. Speaker, tourism. Mr. Speaker, economic transformation will also require a more strategic intervention in our tourism sector. A few sub-regional governments have collaborated on the OECS Regional Tourism Competitive Project, which seeks to facilitate the movement of tourists in the participating countries, using ferries, improving select tourism sites, strengthening the implementation capacity for regional tourism market development. The total value of this project is $10.8 million US. The following activities will commence in 2018. The relocation of blueprint for the police headquarters, rehabilitation of structural design studies for Fort George, which is expected to be completed by mid-year to facilitate physical works thereafter. Mr. Speaker, with our bid to improve facilities, room stock must be another matter that must be addressed. In 2018, we have added to our room stock high-end accommodation facilities. A number of new projects as well as expansion in existing ones are ongoing. Additionally, we continue to increase our airbed and breakfast category of room stock, with over 400 rooms in private homes now available to visitors. Mr. Speaker, based on strong performance in the first 9 months of the year, total visitor arrivals, which includes stayover visitors and cruise ship passengers, are estimated to increase by 9.2% and 16.8% respectively. Mr. Speaker, in 2019, we anticipate commencement of the first phase of the rehabilitation and expansion of the Morris Bishop International Airport. Additionally, we also anticipate that a feasibility study will be completed for the new airport in Karakou. All airport improvement projects, coupled with aggressive efforts to market the destination and enhance offerings, will position the country to substantially increase our stayover arrival and, by extension, the tourism industry. ICT, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, information and communication technology forms the backbone of the digital economy and has the potential to fast forward progress on the sustainable development goals and improve the lives of the citizens of our country. This is our responsibility to future generations. Leveraging ICT across the public service is therefore paramount to improving the efficiency of government and providing better services to our citizens. In this regard, government has contracted an Indian-based company, MGRM, to develop a web portal which offers citizens a single point of access to all government services online. This new web platform will be launched in 2019. Citizens will no longer be constrained by office hours to conduct government business. They will have access to government services 24 hours per day. Mr. Speaker, the safety and security of online payments, therefore, must be important. And these services, Mr. Speaker, and this activity must be addressed urgently. And we have therefore contracted with the World Bank a project to deal with this. The Ministry of ICT will continue to digitize the registry across government with a view to improving efficiency in communication and to document retrieval and being environmentally friendly by reducing the use of stationery. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of ICT is collaborating with the Ministry of Education and a learning platform for delivery of web-based teaching to all secondary schools in our country. Small business development. Mr. Speaker, government is committed to supporting small business development, and one of the avenues used is through the Small Business Development SBDF. Since the start of the program, 1,724 applications have been received, with 748 existing businesses and 517 new businesses benefiting. The three main sectors accessing this facility were agriculture, fishing, and retail, with a total of 517 new jobs created. Karakou and Petit Martinique. Mr. Speaker, our sister isle are also making an important contribution to the vibrancy of economic activity that is now prevalent throughout our country. As a matter of fact, to date, 2,350 feet of asphalt roads have been completed among Royal and Dover areas. A further 1,400 feet of concrete roads were done in Mount Pleasance, Bellevue, and Petit Martinique. Under the housing repair program, 45 persons were assisted with loans and grants to improve their living conditions. And as we seek to support the continued development of our people, I'm extremely happy to report that 182 persons that received Crown lands in Carriacou. The Ministry, Mr. Speaker, of Carriacou and PD Martinique therefore continues to support farming efforts on the sister isle. Currently, increased support is being given for cassava production with the cultivation of over 4 acres of land. 2.5 acres of land in Limless Stock Station are now cultivated with corn and sugarcane. Furthermore, 150 farmers in Carriacou and PD Martinique have received tractor services, while 13 small farmers receive assistance under the Food Security Program. Mr. Speaker, as a result of this, we have seen a 50% increase in seedling generation and crop production. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to major public sector projects. Mr. Speaker, one of the key factors of our strong economic performance is the targeted public sector investment program of the government. I would be first to admit that we can do more to improve the implementation rate, and therefore in 2019, with a concerted effort will be made to procure services to assist with capacity building in the area of project management within the public service. However, at this time, I wish to highlight a few noteworthy achievements for the period 2018 and to inform you of our 2019 intentions pertaining to public sector investment. It is known, Mr. Speaker, the Houses of Parliament was completed in 2019, where we stand today. But, Mr. Speaker, another aspect of this second phase, with the scope of work in this phase would include the upgrade of the main road and service road, landscaping works, footpaths, external lighting and safety barriers, a new entrance infrastructure, solar panels on the roof of the car park, and perimeter fencing. External and internal security infrastructure, concrete paths, and lighting signage will be undertaken, and a cafe outfit will also be implemented. A public gallery and public interpretive signage and museum center will then also be implemented. Mr. Speaker, the Guave Bridge in La Fortune, the Guave Vide, in La Fortune St. Patrick was completed at a cost of $625,000. The Melville Street Meat Marketing Building, the renovation of the existing meat market, which includes 2 additional vending stalls and washroom facilities, a chill room and office space, is expected to be completed before the end of the year at a cost of $285,000. The Guave Medical Center, I spoke about this already, Mr. Speaker. The St. Patrick Road Network Program upgrade. The St. Patrick Road Network is expected to commence in 2019. Phase 1 of this project will cost $27 million and will see the creation of 350 new jobs for the citizens in this rural part of our country. The UK Safe Western Main Road Corridor Project. This project is valued at $46 million and will commence in 2019 and is expected to create over 300 jobs during that phase of work. The Grenada Agricultural Feeder Roads Project Phase 3, Mr. Speaker, that work will commence in 2019, and that phase will cost $101.8 million and create 400 new jobs. The Guave Extreme Rainfall Project, construction of this project will begin in 2019 with the estimated cost of $27.7 million. The St. John River Flood Mitigation Project, the tendering phase for construction will begin in 2019, and EC $12.2 million will be invested in this project. The restoration of government buildings. Mr. Speaker, we'll repair and restore government buildings which are currently not in use. At least $10 million will be invested in this project. Contracts for this project will be done on a parish basis, creating equal opportunity for contractors across the country to bid for projects in their respective parishes. This project will not only create hundreds of jobs around the country, but will ultimately reduce the amount of rent paid by government for office space and other facilities. Road Improvement and Maintenance Program. Mr. Speaker, the government has reintroduced the Environmental Warden Crews, which will provide continuous road maintenance to include drainage, cutting of overhangings, culvert cleaning, and maintenance of the compound of government building and public facilities, such as cemeteries, community centers, and beaches. This initiative is to create 400 permanent jobs. This component will therefore complement the debushing program, which will employ 2,810 persons during the year. Asphalt and concrete works. Asphalt overlays to various sections of road, concrete pavements, retaining walls, drains, and culverts were done to improve and protect the integrity of our road infrastructure. In 2019, we'll continue the program that will create employment for 430 persons. Transportation. Mr. Speaker, we all know that congestion, particularly on major thoroughfares, is an ongoing problem. This matter will be addressed with a mix of initiatives, which include enforcing designated no parking zones through the expansion of our clamping program and a more assertive presence on the streets through the deployment of traffic wardens. Mr. Speaker, 60 wardens will be employed through the Transport Board to augment the capacity of the traffic department to manage and regulate the flow of traffic. The traffic wardens will have the legal authority to enforce the traffic laws, including regulating parking, issuing tickets, and clamping vehicles. Although employed by the Traffic Board, operational control of the wardens will be delegated to the Commissioner of Police, who is the director of the said Transport Board. We believe that while consideration is to be given to development of a computerized traffic management system and a modern traffic light system in the future, traffic wardens will make a significant difference in managing the flow of traffic. Mr. Speaker, I now move to major private sector projects. Mr. Speaker, economic confidence in Grenada is evident as this country continues to attract investment from both local and foreigners alike. During the year 2018, the Grenada Investment Development Corporation facilitated several projects with incentive support. As of September 2018, 49 applications for investment incentive were received, with 41 projects being approved for incentive support, 23 of which were within the tourism sector, 14 in the manufacturing sector, and 4 in the service sector. The proposed investment in these 2018 projects are estimated to be $272 million, with approximately 800 jobs created. Some of these projects commence operations, while there are others in various stages of implementation. These projects include, but are not limited to, the following: True Blue Bay Resort. The project involves the upgrade and expansion of the True Blue Bay Resort, including the construction of a new building on lands adjacent to the existing facility. The facility, when completed, will add 24 units and 5 suites to the Grenada's room stock. The new wing is estimated to cost $10 million, of which $6 million have already been invested. The project, which is now 75% completed, is expected to be operational in January 2019 and will employ an additional 40 persons. Ace Holdings Limited. This is a construction of 50 single apartment units in True Blue Bay Resort. The project cost is estimated at $14 million, of which $9 million were expended in 2018. Construction activities are ongoing, providing employment for 70 persons. The operation is expected to commence again in January 2019, creating permanent employment for 10 persons. The Virgin Beach Development Company Limited. This project involves the construction of a 128-bedroom student accommodation facility at True Blue. The project cost is estimated to be $40 million. 80 persons have benefited from employment in the construction phase, while 5 persons will be provided with permanent employment. The project has already commenced, as I said, Mr. Speaker. Atma Island Living. This is a bed and breakfast facility. Will accommodate 7 luxury guest houses, and it's located at Livera, close proximity to Bathway Beach. And that project cost is $1.1 million and will commence operation in 2019. The Royal Rose Apartments, a small tourism facility located in Carriacou, and that project is estimated at $1.5 million. Construction are nearing completion, and the facility is expected to commence operation at the end of the year, creating permanent employment for several persons. The Buchan Luxury Apartments. The construction of 24 apartment units at Lansepine. The project cost is $1.75 million. Zena Apartments Limited. The establishment of 1.8 million student accommodation facility, which will create permanent employment for 40 persons. Construction activities have begun with 40 construction jobs already created. Divine Apartments. An expansion of existing student accommodation facility for additional 10 apartments situated at True Blue St. George's. Investment cost is $1.4 million. This has begun operation already. Construction employment is for 30 persons and permanent employment for several persons. The Serenite Estates Limited. This $9 million project would involve the construction of a tourism accommodation facility with 52 single apartment units. This facility will be located at Montrouge, St. George's, and will create 25 permanent jobs. Homa Limited. This is a luxury resort with 240 hotel rooms, encompassing 3 properties located in True Blue. The EC $60 million project, part of it, is carded for completion in 2019. That project will create employment for 40 persons when completed. The Royal Palm. The upgrading and expansion of the former Hamilton Hotel to establish 17 rooms. The project cost is $2.9 million. Construction works are ongoing, and operation is expected to commence by the early of 2019. The Waldorf Apartments. Construction of 108 single apartment building at True Blue. The construction of this project has commenced, and the cost is $25 million, with further employment for more persons and permanent jobs created. Comfort Zone Limited. The construction of 10 single apartment units, a restaurant and mini mart at True Blue. Project cost is estimated at $4.3 million. Construction employment is projected for 80 persons, while 20 persons will benefit from permanent employment. Operation is carded to start in December 2018. The Star Development Limited, Mr. Speaker, a 60-room luxury hotel and